there's an intelligence leak from out of Ukraine saying that the reason why Zelensky doesn't know what to do about this is because he already signed all that over to the Brits. And that was back in January when they signed the 100-year partnership agreement.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so, because, the Brits understood that Zelensky was offering this to Trump, or maybe they put him up to it even. But they decided to preempt Trump, and they drafted this 100-year partnership agreement. And Keir Starmer went to Kiev, and he and Zelensky signed it together.
You're watching Capital Cosm. My name is Danny. Today's guests, plural, Tom Luongo and Alex Krainer. Super stoked to have you guys on. Tom, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show, my friends.
Good to be with you again, Danny. Tom.
Morning, Danny. How are you?
Good. Yeah, there's so much stuff to talk about. Let's just take it from the top. I'll kick things off here with you, Tom. And as always, guys, feel free to interject at any time. This is more of a conversation, a discussion. So no real formalities here. So let me kick things off here with you, Tom. Considering what we just had yesterday with the meeting between Macron and Trump, I want to get your thoughts on that. I also want to get your thoughts on what's going on with the gold market. So many things to dig into. But what is most topical for you right now?
Was really, Macron going to Trump and trying to, out macho him was kind of hilarious. A little sad, to be honest with you. Trump is clearly in control of the situation. Macron was not in control of the situation, though he attempted vainly and lamely to do so, and knew exactly what he was doing during the press conference. And I kind of touched Trump on the knee and take control of the situation. Like it was so, but that was quite pathetic, actually. And I think that's the big story. I really do think that the big story right now is that Trump is making a move to cut Europe completely out of the discussions of the future of Ukraine and everything that's happening on the continent. We had the German elections on Sunday. Nothing really. We're going to get into that, I'm sure. And I'm not going to go. I won't filibuster too long about that. Result was very similar to what I expected to happen. We have globalists are in charge in Germany. Okay, so and it's Tuesday, right? But it's still the big story to me because they don't know what to do. They are kind of frozen, and I keep using that metaphor of the end of the USA Russian hockey game at Lake Placid. But we just had the 45th anniversary of it the other day, dramatized in the movie Miracle, where there were a minute left in the game, and Herb Brooks was saying, why haven't they pulled their goalie? And then he realizes, oh my God, they don't know what to do, and that's where we are. We've been in that moment with these people for a while now. And every day, I think Trump pushes them harder on a front that they're not sure how to handle it. So they're making emergency meetings, going to Kiev and all of this stuff. And that's all nice. What they're really doing is they're being forced to accelerate their plans for massive fiscal integration and fiscal stimulus and attempt to consolidate Europe. And like COVID, they're having to do this way earlier than they want to, and not under their conditions. And so Trump setting the tempo for them is it is the big story. And everything else that we're starting to see, like cracks in markets this morning. And I woke up like maybe 20 minutes before we hit record this morning. So I'm like, I only had a chance to have a snapshot of what the markets looked like today, and they're pretty interesting. There's a lot of interesting moves happening. So that being said, I'll pass it over to Alex.
Yeah, Alex, go ahead. Same question to you. What is most topical on your radar screen at the moment? And if there's anything you want to reply to what Tom just said, feel free to do so as well.
Well, the thing that intrigues me the most perhaps now is the whole story about the Ukraine's rare earth minerals. It's again one of those stories that if you just follow the surface reports, you think like, what's this all about? There's more to this story. And sure enough, there's a lot to the story. So let me get started in a broad brush outline. So this is not a new thing that Trump woke up one day, decided to be greedy, and then go to Zelensky and say, like, give me your resources because we gave you a lot of money, so you have to pay us back. Back in September, towards the end of September last year, so Trump wasn't even elected yet, Zelensky went to see Trump in New York, and they talked about this. And Zelensky offered Trump access to Ukraine's resources, rare earth minerals and stuff, to kind of assure himself of a continued U.S. support in case Biden's government fell and Trump came into the White House. So the thing about the rare earth minerals is an old story, and Trump people have been paying attention to this story. And then, so about 10 days ago, we had Rubio gave an interview. No, not 10 days ago, like 4 days ago. Rubio gave an interview, and he was talking about, I was there, I talked to Zelensky about it. He said, yeah, cool, we'll do this deal. It's a good deal. I want to do it. I just need to run it by my, legislative bodies to be able to make that deal. And then Rubio says that 2 days later, he found out in the media that Zelensky was, talking about how he rejected the deal and he's not going to do that and blah, 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 blah. So the same thing that he was offering to Trump on a silver platter in September, he's now rejecting, but in a very brazen way, right? He's embarrassing Rubio. He's embarrassing the Trump administration. He's insulting Trump in addition. Mm-hmm. And that's very strange for a guy who is desperate for continued U.S. support. So I thought, that doesn't make any sense at all. And then somebody sent me an article by a Czech publication called AE News, mm-hmm. which is saying that there's an intelligence leak from out of Ukraine saying that the reason why Zelensky doesn't know what to do about this is because he already signed all that over to the Brits. And that was back in January when they signed the 100-year partnership agreement.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And so, because, the Brits understood that Zelensky was offering this to Trump. Or maybe they put him up to it even. But they decided to preempt Trump, and they drafted this 100-year partnership agreement. And Keir Starmer went to Kiev, and he and Zelensky signed it together on the 16th of January. So that's 4 days before Trump's inauguration. It was like a stealth act of piracy by Keir Starmer to snatch these resources right under Donald Trump's nose. And I think that Trump is completely aware of all this. And I think that this is why he's been trolling the Brits and the Ukrainians and Zelensky by saying that he has to hold elections, he's a dictator, that he's owing so much money to Britain that they want, like the very fact that he's pressing Zelensky about the resources, I think he's trolling the Brits. And then that explains also why the Brits reacted so hysterically when Trump said that Zelensky was a dictator. Mm-hmm. Because if Zelensky was not the legitimate leader of Ukraine at the time when he signed that 100-year agreement, mm-hmm. Then his signature there is worthless. That whole agreement is null and void. So they were all like, no, he's not a dictator. He's a legitimately, duly elected president, blah, 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 blah. Now they really flipped out about that. And then they had the two emergency summits in Paris, and he's like, we'll send troops, and here's $5.6 billion more. And that 100-year agreement, that's like committing, in addition to military support, they're committing no less than £3 billion a year for as long as it's deemed necessary. Now, signing over the how do you call it?
The mineral
all
rights.
these resources, and apparently it includes the Brits. The Brits, after the cessation of hostility, the Brits are meant to take over all of Ukraine's port, all of their natural gas concessions, storage facilities, pipelines, titanium deposits. There's like a whole list of it, but this is contained in a secret appendix. Now, secret appendix, who knows? Maybe these leaks are not accurate, but I read through the 100-year partnership agreement. And if you read that agreement, it makes it look plausible that something like this was done. It's not a whole agreement. Normally when you sign a contract with somebody, it'll have a whole agreement clause, right? It will stipulate that all of the contracting parties' obligations are spelled out in this agreement. There are no obligations falling outside of this. Well, clause 11 of this agreement says it's referring to other arrangements and blah, blah, as deemed necessary to fulfill this agreement, right? And so there is additional stuff. And I think that we've established already that Britain is in an absolutely desperate straits economically.
Yeah, so I pulled up the map here, Alex, really quick, of all of the minerals, the mineral deposits in Ukraine. And what you'll notice is that the really big chunks of deposits are in the Russian annexed territories of Ukraine. Over here, I don't know if you can see it, the Luhansk region has 3.2 trillion. Donetsk has 3.8 trillion. Dnepr has 3.5 trillion, but that's not part of the annexed portion of Ukraine. So, what do you make of that?
Yeah, and I think that the Brits kind of panicked and wanted to make sure that they get the access to the resources and the ports and everything. But then, they understand that they have no way of enforcing this, because the peace will be on Russia's terms. And Russia's terms are they're going to look at Ukraine's constitution, and they're going to say, hey, president's term expires after 5 years, and the constitution doesn't provide for any reason whatsoever to justify delaying presidential elections or extending the president's terms. So it's 5 years and not a day more. And so under Ukraine's constitution, Zelensky is not the legitimate representative of the country. He's not the legitimate leader of the country. The only person whose term can be extended under, let's say, special circumstances, emergency, martial law, whatever, are the representatives in the Rada, in the parliament. And so the legitimate representative of Ukraine would be the Speaker of the House, the equivalent of the U.S. Speaker of the House. Well, that's not who signed the 100-year agreement. So now what Starmer has to do is he has to urgently go see Trump and try to somehow persuade him to back Britain, to give to back away from these resources, and to say, leave it in our capable hand and we'll make sure you're happy as well. and stick with us, because when the war is over, somebody will, at the, let's say, at the UN level, IMF level, at the global level, somebody will have to say, no, this is justified, this is a valid agreement, that's our position, and so therefore, Britain legitimately holds the claim over all these assets in Ukraine. Well, if Trump says no, then they can just rip that agreement into shreds right now. It's completely worthless. And
Alex, the fun part, I don't even interrupt, but the fun part is what did Putin do yesterday?
Yeah.
Right? He offered Trump a major deal, a partnership agreement on all of these resources, all the rare earths and everything else. Massive. Now that you've put that together, like now it's really obvious that Trump and Putin are working together to excise the Brits and Zelensky out of the situation, and the EU is panicking. That's why they sent Macron over yesterday as well.
Exactly.
Come up with a way to cut a deal with Trump.
Exactly. And so this if this turns out this way, and I think it will be such a beautiful, epic episode of poetic justice, because the Brits used Ukraine to wage a proxy war against Russia.
Yes.
In comes Trump and turns it around and uses Ukraine in a proxy war against Britain. And these people have painted themselves into a corner so badly that there's pretty much nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do. Mm-hmm. I think that they must have discussed this in Riyadh. Their talking points are incredibly, how do you call it? Aligned. They feel coordinated, because Putin is saying and Trump is saying the same thing. Well, we don't really know that there's a whole lot of these rare earth minerals in Ukraine to begin with. We just kind of assume, but maybe not. And then in comes Putin and says, yes, it's not certain that there are any, feasibly exploitable rare earth minerals in Ukraine. But guess what? We got loads. And we very much welcome all international partners to exploit those with us, to develop that with us, including the United States. Yep. And now, Starmer going there, Macron going there, Starmer going there. Allegedly, Ursula von der Leyen has tried to call Trump many times. He won't pick up the phone. He's too busy for her. And so what they're doing is the old British, flooding the zone, applying pressure, trying to persuade Trump to change his stance vis-a-vis this whole thing, Ukraine and Russia and West and rare earth minerals and all of this. And they're all like lining up to talk to him, to kind of charm him. And this would work wonders if there was still a government of morons in Washington. Like, for example, if there was somebody like Kamala Harris in the White House. Remember that Kamala Harris, for whom Keir Starmer sent 100 of his Labour Party operatives to campaign for her so she would become the next US president? Oops. Well, the Trump team is not a government of morons. They're discerning. They can read the cost-benefit analysis of this situation, and they can read the writing on the wall, which is that Russia won, Ukraine lost, and the British have nothing to offer. And if you want to make deals, Russia's got loads. They're flush with money. They're flush with energy and minerals and metals and food and whatever you like. And Britain has exactly nothing to offer.
What's really funny, Alex, is I saw a report the other day that Boeing is going to be coming back to the Russian market in exchange for, thousands of tons of aluminum. The same day, I see a report of yet another aluminum smelter in Europe shutting down. Like, These things are all like I hate to it's like it's not coordinated, but it's like there's a it's all kind of coming together in a beautiful mosaic of
Yeah.
of suck for the I'll be honest with you, there's a mosaic of suck for these people. Like they literally, again, they always have this, like, again, I just always put the metaphor up is they have a big project MS project file at Evil Corp Central, and they're going to do this, and then we have to do this, and we may have to move this one a little bit. Can we move that dependent task up there? Yeah, so here, get over to Kiev and sign this deal with Zelensky, blah 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 blah. Putin's been making the point that he won't negotiate with Zelensky because Zelensky is not the legitimate leader of Russia since the summer, that he has no ability to negotiate anything because he's not the president. And so they're continuing this fiction that this man is in charge. Meanwhile, Trump and Rubio and all the rest of them are like, and there was something else that came up while you were talking that underscored this point. It was the Russian aluminum thing, that, and then there was something else, and like it's all very clear to me. Alex, the beautiful presentation, by the way, on this, outstanding work as always. But I was like, yeah, this is playing out almost exactly the way you would expect. And again, we have this going on against the backdrop of the LBMA and gold, and it's crazy town. But the EU can't make a move here, and they want to be they want to have a seat at the table, and there's no table for them to sit at. It's not even that they don't have the kids' table; the table's been removed from the room, and they're just kind of standing around going, "But what about us?" Like, well, I don't know. There's an IHOP down the street. You can, go get some pancakes because you're not a part of this conversation. And I mean, I never thought I would see it in a million years, but it's happening. When Trump was asked about the meeting with Keir Starmer, was clearly being like needled by or set up. I don't know. There's like softball thrown at him about his meeting with Starmer. He's at the desk, in the White House, signing executive orders while he takes questions from the press. And so what's this meeting with Starmer going to be about? He's like, I don't know. That guy asked for the meeting. Whatever. And he brushed it off as if he was like, as if it was, a plumber was showing up and asking for was there any work to do around Mar-a-Lago this week? You know what I mean? It was that level of disdain, and I'm like, oh yeah, there ain't nothing going on here. This is going to be hilarious. And what I've been saying is that Starmer is going to come in with some. he's got something in his back pocket. The Brits make these secret arrangements with people all the time. Right, they're everywhere. They make these agreements with people. They come in, they sign a piece of paper, or and like they did with Apple, and over end-to-end encryption, saying, okay, we're going to force you to sign this, and you can't tell anybody, right? So that we maintain control over the situation and maintain OPSEC. Well, they do this with everything. I fully expect Starmer to be sent over here with some old agreement between the United States government and the UK. I mean, there's all this stuff floating out there, like the just for example, like for the people who think in terms of the government of 1871 nonsense and all of that we already sold the whole country out to the City of London back in 1871, but all this rotten nonsense. But at the end of the day, like, I got a guy in the White House, I got a military, and pieces of paper do not mean anything, and treaties can be torn up and ignored. But I expect Starmer to come in with this kind of attitude of like, look, you're going to do this or else, right? And Trump is literally going to laugh him out of the room. And what we're starting to see now, I'm just trying to put this together, and I'm just going to throw it out there, Alex. We're starting to see cracks in the financial markets, right? We're starting to see stock markets roll over a little bit. We're starting to see really big moves this morning, and I haven't had a chance to really process it, but it's been coming for weeks, of the rollover in the U.S. German bond spreads, both the 10 and the 2-year. And the 10 is moving really fast this morning. It's down like 15 basis points this morning alone. I was shocked because I was, doing my work for my other, and it's when I update that 3 days a week, like every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the week, and Sunday. So 4 days a week, I've covered what's happening in U.S., UK, German bond spreads. I'm watching them all the time, but markets are moving, and they're moving in ways that I'm expecting them to move. If there's something on the horizon, I have to wonder. There's going to come a point where they're going to make a big move to financially punish the United States for getting uppity. It's coming. It may already be here. I also see at the same time that the Japanese are allowing the yen to strengthen.
Yeah.
Which to me is a countervailing move, because the Japanese are a wholly owned subsidiary of the U.S. So I'm watching big fights, and in some ways it's sad that Martin Armstrong isn't here, because we could talk about what he's seeing on that front, and because that's Marty's bread and butter, right? But unfortunately, so yeah, it would be really. I just think there's something happening here, and it's also going to be time, and the timing makes sense as well. One last point is that we have the budget reconciliation deadline coming up, and on March 15th, and I know that's a priority for the administration, that they have to get a budget pushed through this recalcitrant Congress under reconciliation, where they only need a simple majority, and they want to make massive cuts to the budget. They want to cut $1.3 trillion from the budget. They want to get that in process, and then once that's done, then they can start working on the next pieces of their puzzle that they have. And they have it. I mean, they have a Microsoft project chart over at Trump Central, and it clashes desperately with the one over at Eagle Corp Central.
Tom,
and that's what's going on now, I think.
You mentioned the markets there, and you also mentioned the stuff that's going on with the LBMA emptying out. Is there a connection between what's happening right now at the LBMA and the fight between Trump and the UK?
I absolutely. I think that this is the United States. I've been saying for a couple of weeks, or for about a little over a week now, I've done five or six different podcasts, and that this feels like all the world, that the United States, that we're reaching that moment where the LBMA and or the COMEX are reaching that moment where we're going to get a global margin call on the paper gold market, going all the way back to stuff we used to read 25 years ago from FOFOA and another and all that. If you go back, if you're an old gold bug, you know exactly what I'm talking about, folks. If you're not, then I throw it out there for you to go and research that this moment in time, which is basically a global bank run against the gold, paper gold market, is in process. The thing that has everybody weirded out, I think, is that they never expected it to be the United States that would initiate the bank run. That they always expected the United States to be the victim of the bank run, because it's always been, oh, the COMEX is going to go broke. Oh, the COMEX, oh, the COMEX, oh, the COMEX. Meanwhile, nobody talks about the LBMA, a real over-the-counter market that's unregulated, where capital can be rehypothecated 1 billion freaking times. Whereas, I mean, while the rules on the COMEX aren't, they're not great, but at least there are rules. And within the City of London, there are no rules on rehypothecation. And so, the classic British thing is to tell you what's going on and then divert that and try and shift the blame to somebody else. They're masters at blame shifting, because they generally control the media. They certainly control most of the financial media, be it the Financial Times and their newspapers, and even most of our newspapers. I mean, look, you can't get a straight answer out of the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg or Reuters or any of those people, because they all have deep ties to the City of London. And we have to realize that when we read financial press, it comes with that veneer. And we're all victims of this. I was victim of this, of believing this stuff for years. I mean, I'm not going to, I mean, even when you read Zero Hedge, it comes with a certain gloss on it, even if, because you read, because look, the bank analysts at JP Morgan and BofA and Citibank and all this, like, they're all steeped in this. That's their imprinting. It's the way they were inculcated. It's the world that they grew up with. And, it takes a lot to break out of that and go, well, that framework, intellectual framework, emotional framework, whatever, is invalid. And, and it's akin to the talking point that I've made for years that, when you have two generations of men and women who have worked in these industries, steeped in these ideas, Keynesian economics, central banks, this kind of Forex, blah, blah, all these rules, GDP, debt to GDP ratio, all these macro statistics that are frankly rotten nonsense. I mean, literal rotten nonsense. They're nothing more than guild speak meant to make what is very simple incredibly complicated. And when you're dealing with somebody like that, you're generally dealing with a gatekeeper, not a teacher. And I know I talk about really complicated things, and sometimes it sounds like I'm going off into the hinterlands in order to come back. What I'm actually trying to do is trying to make what is the plumbing of this scenario as which is very complicated, as simple as I can make it. That's my goal. It always is, and I don't always succeed. Just to give you an idea. So I think that there's something serious going on here, and the LBMA thing is massive. I think the United States is getting ready at some point during Trump's second term to put, big old capital controls around physical gold. Vince Lombardi and I have been on this point for almost 2 years now, a year and a half. That all the signs are there, all the building blocks were already put in place. In the same way that I saw the building blocks being put in place for the Federal Reserve to get control over the leverage within the Eurodollar markets 3 years ago. Same kind of thing. And the same way that Alex just put together all of the pieces and the building blocks of how the Brits were going to secure themselves hundreds of billions of dollars or trillions of dollars of capital and collateral that they didn't have through the back door, and then try to get the force of the United States and then blackmail the United States into holding on to it. And I think that just literally just popped into my head. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering why Pam Bondi hasn't released the Epstein list yet, that may be a part of this whole blackmail operation. I'm just
they're weaponizing the list, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they're weaponizing the list. I'm just trying to throw something out there for people to hang their hat on. So I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying it's just pure and utter speculation on my part.
Yeah, before we close the lid on the Europe, UK, Ukraine ordeal, I want to get Alex's take on what he thinks is being planned for the peacekeeping force potentially winding up in Ukraine. There's been talks of European peacekeeping force to the tune of 70,000. I don't understand I don't think Putin will be okay with that. In which case, what do you think happens to Ukraine moving forward? Do we see China make a move and they take up the mantle of the peacekeeping force in Ukraine? And then also what happens to NATO? There was an article just the other day. I don't have it with me right now, unfortunately, but it posits that we could see the end of NATO by the summer. So what do you make of that, Alex?
Well, first of all, I don't think these European peacekeeping forces are going to amount to anything at all, because I don't think there's going to be willingness to put them there, because the Russians have said unequivocally, no way, no how. The reason why they want to put and they're not even, they renamed this. They're calling them reassurance forces. And the reason why they call them reassurance forces is because the initial name, the Tripwire Forces, was a bit too obvious. So they opted for, they opted for reassurance forces. Well, if you want to control Ukrainian ports, pipelines, natural gas facilities, titanium deposits, all of these resources, you have to have troops on the ground that are going to enforce that control. Mm-hmm. And so this is why they can't just leave it up to the Ukrainians, because Ukraine, after the armistice, is going to have a different government. Mm-hmm. And whether the Westerners like it or not, that new government is going to be Russia friendly. And they're going to look at all these contracts. They're going to say, Zelensky signed some kind of 100-year partnership with Britain. That's worthless. He had no right to sign that. So goodbye. And if you don't have troops there enforcing the given order, then you have nothing. You've just you lost completely. So that's why the Brits and the French primarily are fantasizing about putting forces there. Radek Sikorski in Poland is talking about something like that too, but Radek Sikorski is a British agent. He was educated in the UK. He used to be a UK citizen. He was recruited into the Bullingdon Club, the most elite of the London clubs. He was recruited in there by Boris Johnson, his BFFs with Boris Johnson, with Lord David Cameron, with George Osborne, and all of these people. So he's completely part of the British establishment, and he was sent to Poland with Britain's backing to become Polish foreign minister, interior minister, Polish minister again. Foreign minister again. And so he's arguing in favor of British agenda again. But apart from this, there's no willingness elsewhere. Maybe the Baltic states could be persuaded to contribute some forces. But what are we talking about? Let's say Britain is talking about 30,000 people. Sorry, they're talking about 10,000 people. To have 10,000 people there, you need 30,000 people. That's almost half the British army.
Combat troops.
At 70,000.
Yeah, because you need rotation troops, so you need 20,000, and then you need another 10,000 support.
You need logistics
So
troops.
Yeah, it's about 3 times. If you take all of NATO member nations, and let's say that they're all willing and able, you cannot come up with 50,000 troops. They don't have 50,000.
Interestingly enough, Alex, I'm going to interject here because I was chatting with Dexter White about this very issue yesterday, and he brought up a very, very good point, which is that all of these countries that are so heavily invested are in the potential of stealing all the resources, and these should be called occupation forces. These are not tripwire forces. They're not reassurance forces. They're occupation forces, because you just brought up what their real goal is, which is to enforce these agreements at the point of a gun. What's interesting about all this is, go look at the German army. They have like 15 tanks or 100 tanks. Go look at the Brits. They don't have any tanks. Go look at the French. They don't have any tanks. You know who has tanks? Poland. Poland has 1,500 Abrams. The only credible military force west of Ukraine is Poland. In fact, because Poland uses the same rail gauge as the rest of Europe, they're a more credible force to attack Paris than Russia is. Which is why the Poles are so important. Which is why they're really trying to get the Poles to go into Ukraine as the occupation forces, because the Poles have a real army.
Well,
they
I think
have
many of them
actual materiel, as opposed to the rest of them who do not. So, but I think, honestly, Alex, I think just one last point, which is, this is all about them wanting to capitalize and figure out a way to capitalize a massive stimulus spending and fiscal integration package under the finance, tax, and spend wise through the European Commission. And they need that collateral and they're willing to risk World War III to get it in order to collapse everything, and collapse the member states into Brussels and give the European Commission the tax and spend authority. That's why Ursula von der Leyen and the European Commission were all in Kiev. That's why Friedrich Merz is going to try and, in Germany, is going to try and blow through the austerity budget rules of Germany. Because of that, again, that would tell you why we finally have our catalyst as to the rolling over of the U.S.-German bond spreads, because now German bonds are moving much, much faster to the upside, or at least they're holding stable while while the world is buying the U.S. yield curve, the long end of the U.S. yield curve. So either that, or I mean, that's one potential explanation for that, or they are now desperately stocking up on, again, trying to buy a whole bunch of U.S. Treasuries to force the long end down in order to keep their yields from rising. Something along those lines is happening here. They need to keep bond yields low because they need to issue trillions of dollars of new debt, and they don't have any collateral. And so Ukraine is where they need to go get that collateral. They don't have it in the Middle East. They don't have it anywhere else. So what are they going to do?
Yeah. Hey, Tom, Alex, I want to, before we wrap things up on the Ukraine ordeal, I want to show you guys a video. This is from Bernie Sanders. This is kind of a spectacle to watch. So,
Oh, do we have to?
Yeah, unfortunately we do. But let's see.
I do not want to hear one Republican come to the floor of the Senate and talk about freedom unless that senator has the guts to call out Trump for the lies that he is telling about Putin and the war in Ukraine. Mr. President, it was Russia that started the war, not Ukraine. It is Putin who is the dictator, not Zelensky. This country must not align itself with Putin and authoritarianism. We must fight for democracy.
Anyways, that's enough of that. But what is the deal with Bernie Sanders and the quote unquote progressive left? Why are they so attached to this Ukraine war if they are supposed to be, back in? I mean, I'm in my mid 30s. I mean, you guys are much older than I am, but not much. I didn't mean it that way. But
no, I am. I'm okay. I'm 57, dude.
I know. Alex is.
Stop digging, Danny. Stop digging.
Yeah. But back in my day, like the progressive left, they were anti-war. What's happening? There is seemingly no anti-war presence on the left nowadays. They may be anti-war when it comes to certain wars in the Middle East, but when it comes to Europe, they're not. What do you think is going on there?
It's obvious they have always been fake anti-war people. They've always been. Look, Bernie Sanders is a communist. Okay, let's not mince words. He's a communist. The EU is the ultimate expression of European communism, and all of its technocratic glory. Okay, that's what they want. That's what they've always. And Bernie, being a good old soldier in this fight, he's going to try and keep the orthodoxy moving in that direction. They have created a world where whatever Trump does is wrong and whatever they want is right. It's a false divide. It's a false divide and conquer. It's a false duality. It's a false dyad, and it's meant to keep and radicalize a particular part of the American electorate in a state of insanity. And I'm going to tell you, the main reason why Bernie's doing something like that is not because he's scared that Putin and Trump are going to negotiate peace. It's because he's getting ready to radicalize the troops to get them ready for violence internally in the United States. If Britain loses and the EU loses all of these fights that we've just laid out that they're going to lose, their next move is violence. And they're going to start burning cities. That's what they're going to do. And you can feel it here in the zeitgeist. They're amplifying. They're trying to amplify crazy leftists on TikTok, and they're calling for violence everywhere. And
can they do it? Can you do it without the USA and all these other shadow funding organizations that have gone on throughout the years? It seems like they've been defanged recently.
It's a very good question, Danny, and I hope that that's the case. And that's part of the reason why I think Trump went after USAID as fast as he did, and NED, and why they're going after the Department of Defense, the State Department, all of that stuff. Like, and there was the thing yesterday that Musk now has. There was a note that Musk has mapped the entire payment system of the entire government by now, and that's why they're freaking out. But here's the thing: we've got them to the point now where they will spend their seed corn, as opposed to paying it out of cash flow, which they were getting out of the U.S. government. Now they're spending it out of assets, which is what you want them to do if you're trying to fight a war of attrition against a group that has a massive amount of assets. You've got to get them out. You got to stop getting them to spend out of cash flow. Then they now have to spend out of assets. And so that's what Putin's been doing in Ukraine, right? We ran out of budgetary money to send them on a regular basis. Now we have to start spending seed corn, right? And now we got to make new weapons to send to Ukraine because the old stocks are gone, blah, blah. The inventory's gone. This is gone. That's gone. So now you're in that moment where you have to, start putting assets on the table, which is that's the move where they're going to be at their most dangerous.
Right. I know we're getting long into tooth here, so I have a couple of questions from my Substack for you guys for my paying members.
If you wouldn't mind, Alex, do you want to reply to that just to make sure that I'm not off base on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I mean,
Alex, do you have anything to say about what Tom just alluded to?
Yeah. Bernie Sanders is a Pied Piper of the U.S. left. His role is to kind of rally the troops, to rally the people who are committed to left causes, the nice things about social, inclusiveness, blah, blah, all of those things. But if you paid attention to the U.S. politics since at the very latest 2016, you understand that he's a traitor, that he is using his position and his rhetoric simply to kind of influence the outcome of the U.S. votes, with no intention whatsoever to keep to any of the commitments that he makes and pretends to advocate. In U.S. politics, up until the Trump revolution, it's been the case that either you're an insider or you're an outsider. And there's a statement by Elizabeth Warren. Wait, is that her name? Pocahontas?
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren.
Yes, you're correct.
So she alluded to a meeting she had with Andy Summers, not Andy Summers, Larry Summers.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Summers is the guitarist of the Police.
Yes. Brilliant.
She had a meeting with Larry Summers in which he told her, you can be an insider or you can be an outsider. If you're an insider, you have access, you have power, you get the money. I'm not repeating her words exactly, but you can see that they all became millionaires. But if you want to compare that to an outsider, you could think of a figure like Ralph Nader, who espoused many of the same causes as Bernie Sanders, only genuinely and earnestly. He got completely disenfranchised. And so the fact that Bernie Sanders is still there, that he's recording these videos, that he's trying to rouse the troops, he's trying to delegitimize Donald Trump's foreign policy, pile on to the demonization of Vladimir Putin and this and this and this. He's doing it because that's his assignment. He's been assigned to do that by other insiders to whom he's pledged his allegiance. He's a traitor, and he's the traitor of the worst kind, because in 2016, he actually did build a movement of people who wanted some real changes in the U.S. society. He drew them to himself and then betrayed them and handed them over to Hillary Clinton. That's why she lost in 2016.
He was a conversion factory for the progressives to convert into Democrats, essentially.
Yeah. He was intended as the conversion factor, only it didn't work. It failed.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
what happened? It didn't fail because Trump took all the talking points.
Yeah, exactly. And then he's the same guy who said that Joe Biden is a decent guy. He's my friend. He's a good man.
Of course.
And all this shit. So Bernie Sanders is I like him about as much as I like Keir Starmer. Same globalist shill. Nothing more than that.
Yeah, I was going to say I like him about as much as I like sewage sludge. Like. So
Good,
you're absolutely right. But what was interesting is that going back to the 2016 election cycle, just to remind everybody, one of the things that Dexter White and I back then said, we were watching the election. We said this populist wave that's coming, the Bernie Bros, there's going to be a coming together. Trump is going to take when they betray Bernie. Trump is going to take the Bernie Bros. He's going to take a certain portion of them, especially the Rust Belt guys, the union guys, and he's going to bring them across the aisle. And then
that's exactly what happened.
And that's exactly what he did. And he was able to win the 5 or 6 counties that were pivotal in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and that's how he won the election. And they didn't see it coming. And we could see it coming from a mile away. I mean, it wasn't, if you knew anything about if you knew anything about those people, and you understood how the Democrats were at the time, a weak coalition of 3 basic groups: union guys, minorities, and Washington insiders, and realized that the Washington insiders didn't care about the other 2 groups. I was talking with Peter St. Onge yesterday for my podcast, and he reminded me that when you have the ability to cheat like they did and still do, not only do you ignore the other voters, like you ignore Republican voters because you've got the cheat, you're going to cheat and you're going to win. You start to ignore your own voters. It was a great point, and I was like, because but it's absolutely what happened, and it really started in 2016, and then in 2020 they just went whole hog across the board, and it pissed off a lot of people, and so then they instituted policies under Biden that no one wanted, and now we are here where we are today, and that's why the backlash in the United States against all this is so strong. We're not quite there in Europe yet. Like it's coming, it's building, but it's not quite there. I thought the election results in Germany were encouraging, but pretty much what I expected.
The pendulum has started to swing back, though, Tom. Absolutely. It's at the very early stages.
Well, and you can see it in Austria. One of my very astute patrons pointed out to me the other day that don't look at Germany, look at Austria first, because Austria is generally more conservative than Austria is more conservative than Germany, and what happens in Austria first will eventually come across the pond, across the border into Germany, and so it's beginning to start there. And they did a very good job of splitting the electorate over AfD in this round, but this is the last time they're going to get that done. Because Frederick Merz wins, and within 24 hours he's like, "Yep, no, we're not closing the border. I lied, and I don't care." Like he's literally saying, I don't care what I just told the voters what they wanted to hear.
And you know what that's going to do? That's going to radicalize the right even more.
It is. And he's going to have to, I don't give this government 18 months, by the way. Okay. I don't give this government 18 months. The Germans I think they're getting very close to that moment, like we are here in the United States. I do. You can just feel it and I was speaking with an AfD MP on our mutual friend Crypto Rich's show on last week, and he was a little more cynical than I was, but he agreed with me that you can start to see it, and I think the youth vote being completely radicalized in this election, even though the young women went to Die Linke, to the left, and the young men went for AfD, they both rejected the center, they both rejected the establishment. And we're at that kind of moment. We're at that 2016 moment in the United States when all the Bernie Bros, and Trump, and you know what I mean. And so, that's kind of what happened. All the populists split off into their respective towards their respective corners as per their political inclinations, and then eventually they're going to meet in the center. And that's what's going to happen eventually, but not for this election cycle. And that also means that whatever the EU is going to do, they're going to do quick, because they know they don't have a lot of time. They know that the political situation in the UK is fragile. Germany, France, and a variety of other places. It's actually more interesting to talk about how Trump is now trying to push a wedge, and how I think even City of London, like there's a split inside of British politics about Reform Party. Not that I have a whole lot of hope for the Reform Party, but it's that creation of a new political alignment, and to push Keir Starmer out of power. That's clearly on the table.
Why is Europe so hell bent on going to war with Russia? Russia is trying to give them so many off ramps, but they, even with all these negotiations and talks between the U.S. and Russia, Europe as well as Ukraine and the UK, they seem to just hunker down and just dig their heels. What is the rationale? Do they just believe their own propaganda, or is there something deeper afoot here that they just have to knock off Russia? Alex, I'll let you take this one.
No, the European political scene has been purged and gutted, and only the kinds of people like Bernie Sanders have remained in power. They're the only ones with the megaphone. Most of the European people that you don't hear from and you don't see are dead against going to war against Russia. But let's say the political class are all the same idiots. The guy like Mark Rutte, the new NATO Secretary General, Europe's foreign affairs minister, Kaja Kallas, Ursula von der Leyen, they're all very, very corrupt liars, morons, degenerates. And when I say morons, I mean to say they're very ignorant people. They really don't know what they're talking about. They're running everything off of a script that they're given, and that they're dancing to the tune that the Davos set plays for them.
Yes.
And the Davos is the hidden hand of London, of the City of London. And they are taking money for all this. European Parliament is very, very corrupt. So are most European governments.
Mm-hmm.
They've been preparing this moment for a long time. They've been recruiting these young global leaders, people who are, let's say, handsome looking, reasonably attractive, like Sanna Marin, the former prime minister of Finland.
Did they come after you, Alex?
They offered, but we couldn't come. We couldn't agree on the price.
You check off all the boxes you described.
Yeah, and so as a result, this is the caliber of person who is in power pretty much everywhere in Europe, and people who are not on the same side are either being purged out of the system, or they're being disenfranchised in other ways, or they're being assassinated like Robert Fico was. They tried to kill him. They have plans to regime change Hungary to get rid of Orban. In Croatia, they wanted to change the president, Milanovic, who is more like Orban, Fico type person. In Romania, they canceled elections when the guy who wasn't on board with them was going to win. In Germany, they possibly cheated. Apparently, there are now pretty widespread claims that they cheated in the elections, because there are many polls that don't square with the results.
Right.
And then in France, people elected the wrong candidates. So Macron basically, at his discretion, appointed a government from the party that came in third or fourth in the elections. I mean, in various ways, they're canceling the democratic will of the people, and they're pushing to the fore the pro-war candidates. And that's why it seems like all of Europe is gung-ho for war against Russia, even though that's very, very completely hollow. It's out there, visible on the facade, but it's a very much a Potemkin facade. There's nothing behind it, and so there's no ability, there's no willingness, there's no appetite for war, and this is why they're so desperate to keep the Americans in.
Gotcha. Well, hey, let's go ahead and pivot over really quick to Substack questions, guys. First question is from DYL. Question for Alex and Tom. Right. So he says, right now, the condition in Iran is arguably the worst it's been for the population. The Iranian rial is losing value every day. Now at 100,000 rial for one USD, do they see the situation improving for Iran with the Ukraine war wrapping up and Russia becoming more available to work with Iran on aspects of their strategic partnerships? Do any of you guys want to take this first, or should I just go to Tom? Tom, do you want to take this?
I think that Iran is a very important part of Trump's plans in the Middle East. Clearly, Iran at this point has, a somewhat of a security guarantee from Russia, but I don't think that that's Western focused. I think it's actually more northernly focused, meaning it's more about the securing the international north-south transport corridor and any potential problems with Turkey and or Azerbaijan and or Afghanistan. That's a big question, and the way I'm going to look at it is Trump has decided to try and take as much of the religious justification for Gaza off the table for both the Palestinians and the Israelis, which is the right move to make, which is that whole "we're going to buy Gaza" thing. Like that's clearly what he's doing now. Is he's trying to get this back into practical solutions for the region. And
well, he also brought the Arabs back in the fold too. The Arabs
right
are now
he's absolutely done that. So by doing that, he's like scared everybody into like, okay, what are you going to put on the table? What are you going to put on the table? What are you going to put on the table? And the other side of this is that he's already issued the carrot to Iran that he wants to have a reasonable negotiation. Let's get this done. So on the Israeli side of the equation, he's taken away Israel's religious war justification for further violence in Gaza. So now all he's got to do is get Iran to back down. And it's like basically Iran's not going to back down until Israel's defanged. Israel's not going to back down until Iran is defanged. So you set the table such that both of them are effectively defanged first, and then you negotiate a settlement. I think that's where we're headed. I don't think it's a priority per se right now. He's got Ukraine to deal with. He's got the budget reconciliation to deal with. He's got internal stuff he's got to deal with there. And remember, all of the corruption stuff points back to the British and to the Israelis. So all of the stuff that Musk is doing at Doge indirectly affects all of this stuff. What I would say is just watch the situation with Iran and see how it plays itself out. The British are going to push for war. The Israelis are going to push for war, just like they do all the time. I think Trump is ahead of them, but it's not his highest priority at this point. And so let's just not think too many steps ahead is what I would recommend. That's my take. I don't know about you, Alex.
Alex, what do you think?
I very much tend to agree with you, and I think that the large strategic picture that is emerging is that Trump has held his talks with the Russians in Riyadh. I think that one of the high priority issues there is the security architecture in the region, and the Russians do have a comprehensive partnership agreement with Iran. So do the Chinese. I think that's going to stand, and I think that for practical and let's say transactional purposes, I think that Trump will probably be moving in the direction of making a deal with the Iranians that's going to be good for them and good for the United States. With respect to Israel, obviously he's going to have to stay with the same old rhetoric, because he has the Christian evangelicals and the Zionist Jews in the United States, which are both very important, a very important voting bloc. He doesn't want to alienate them. But let's see what happens rather than what people say, because Trump obviously says a lot of things, and a lot of those things that he says are exactly aimed at getting everybody really, really excited. Let's judge it by the deeds.
Yeah, it's the polar opposite as to what we've been used to, which is just flashy words but no action.
Right.
This is the complete opposite.
This is going to be
this is hurty words, but the deeds are okay. I mean, God, the bombs stopped dropping all over Gaza. The humanitarian convoys went in.
Yes.
If they can keep that up, I don't care what he says or tweets, or whether he pulls up a chair for Netanyahu or not. I don't give a shit.
Right.
Look at the results.
Look at the results. Exactly.
That's what matters. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right, guys. This has been a fascinating discussion. Anything else you guys want to put on the table and talk about before you wrap up? I think we've covered pretty much everything. Both Tom, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. Anything you want to mention before we wrap up, aside from your websites and such?
No, I'm good. Follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. Gold Goats and Guns at Patreon if you want more of this. And and let's enjoy the news flow in Trump's new America, because it's much more interesting than it was under Joe Biden.
Alex?
Amen to that. Agreed. I'm on X at Naked Hedgie. And speaking of the impending collapse of Britain, I have the guilt, the British pound, and FTSE in my iSystem Trend Compass report. So that's on Substack. Check it out.
All right. We'll have the links to all that stuff down below, so be sure to check them out, guys. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. Comment, go Alex, go Tom, go in the comment section. Let me know who you agreed with the most. I'm going to pit you guys against each other. But if you disagreed with anything as well, let me know. Got to farm that engagement one way or the other. But also check me out on Substack, capitalcosm.substack.com, where you can get early access, ad-free versions, and uncensored versions of my interviews that warrant it. And so with all that said, thank you guys for watching. Tom, Alex, thank you guys for coming on, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.